Okay, I think we will go ahead and get started. Tonight's kind of a two-point topics tonight. The first one is to give all of you an update on State 4-H horse. And then the second half of it is a points training. So we will begin now on the horse update portion. So tonight we're just really going to be talking about what's new with State Horse Show and giving updates on that. And then we'll follow up with some training on the county horse points and trip distribution plan. And then lastly, let you know still that we have an opening for our statewide drill team committee chair. And then we'll have time for some quick question and answer before we move forward. So as most of you know, the 2025 State Horse Show has moved. And I'm going to talk a little bit about, we talked about some of the things, and as we get to know them throughout the season, as we plan and make those changes for the moves that we're going to have, as we figure things out, we're going to share those and let you know. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about what is new since the last time and update a little bit about what was before in case you missed it. So as you know, there's going to be 2 state shows. So the horse classes shows are going to be at Cannon Falls at Simon's Arena. And I do want to just keep making sure that people know, if you didn't know that the dates have changed from our normal State Horse Show weekend. So September 5th through the 9th, and we've also had to add on Tuesday. So please note that date change and that extended time period. So that'll be all of the games classes, pleasure classes, equitation classes, horsemanship classes, trail training, and all of those type of classes that will be held there. And just to note, the reason we had to shift and change a little bit is because Simon's Arena is a different facility than State Fair. It's not quite as large as we're used to using, so we have to make some adjustments, and we're working with Champ Show as they had to make adjustments too. So our dates had to shift a little and their dates had to shift a little. The second show is going to be where our hippology, horse judging, speech and demo, miniature horse state contest and state drill team is going to be held. And that's going to be held Saturday and Sunday, September 13th and 14th, which is the weekend of our normal state fair. With a location, we're still working on contracting with them, so I can't announce it till that's clear, but it will be located in central Minnesota for that date. What we have figured out, I think I mentioned last time, for those of you who were on, we were working on the schedule. Because Simons has 1 indoor arena and 1 outdoor arena, we have to work on a good weather schedule and a bad weather schedule. So we think we've got that hammered out to the best of our ability. Now, knowing that that can always shift a little bit, but we've done a lot of thought and put a lot of thought and had people look at this schedule. And we think that this is, to the best of our ability right now, the schedule that we're going to be sticking with. Now, know as we shift that the good weather schedule and the bad weather schedule can be interchangeable and work together. So we may have a full day of a bad weather schedule mixed in with the good weather schedule, or we may have half day where we have to shift a little bit. So we're going to go through both of those schedules just so you can get a feel of how we're looking at doing state show at Simons. So we're going to start with the good weather schedule. The good weather schedule on Friday in the indoor arena starting at 7 a.m. will be jumping figure 8. And Friday in the outdoor arena, also starting at 7 a.m., is poles. Now, don't panic if you plan or hope that you're going to be running in both. If you note on there, you'll note that under jumping figure 8, we're going to be starting with grade 13 and working our way down to grade 6, just like we do at the normal State Horse Show. But in poles, we're going to be starting with grade 9 down to 6, then jumping back to 13 through 10. That way, we feel, because we know the length of time on the general shows is about 7.25 hours for each of those classes at our regular horse show, because we constantly track the times, a length of time our shows take. So we know roughly if we have the same number of riders, it's going to take about the same amount of time. So if we start with a different class, we won't have those conflicts of grades. So we'll be moving through them in those routines. So just make sure that you're aware of those things and note those schedule changes, because they are going to be a little different than we're used to. So Friday is solely games, indoor and outdoor. Saturday, same thing, same type and concept. So barrels and key race will be going on at the same time. Barrels will be in the indoor, key will be in the outdoor. Same philosophy, 7 a.m. to about 4 p.m. or 7 a.m. to about 3:45 p.m. You'll note that barrels is a little bit longer. Generally, we have a few more participants in barrels than in key race. So that time is a little bit different. But note that the indoor will always start with grades 13th. The outdoor will always start for games with grade 9. So that we can avoid those conflicts to the best of our ability. Now, we know if there does happen to be a conflict, like one class is going faster, one's going slower, that we always will make that work. We just need to make sure that you communicate and let the people at those gates and both of those know if it's running close to one of those. But we really feel strongly that with the size of classes in these, that we're not going to have the same conflicts by shifting around our grades a little bit. So with 4 classes and games, if you have figured that out yet, you'll know that Friday and Saturday are all of the games classes. So technically you will be done. If you're a gamer and that's all you do, you'll be done on Saturday of the state horse show. So you would be free as anybody is to come and go, but you would be done with all of your classes unless you're showing ranch. So we have moved on Sunday. We have put ranch starting at 7 a.m. in the outdoor. So if you're a gamer and you did qualify for ranch, you'll actually be done fairly early on Sunday morning. So our hope is that if you are one or the other, knowing that our facilities are a little smaller, it's a little tighter, that we're trying to lump the disciplines together a little bit better. So as you note, the gamers will all get done first, then we're going to move to Western, and then we're going to move to English as a follow-up on Tuesday. So if you note on the Sunday indoor schedule, we start with Equestrians with Disabilities at 9 a.m., followed by training at noon to 3, and then trail. Trail is these approximate times, right? 3:30 to 10:30. We're going to go as we normally do, and we're just going to work through without a stop. But so these are tentative times of starting. And trail are going to be in 1.5 hour blocks per age group, like we've done in the past. And then you'll note in the outdoor that ranch is approximately 7 to 9:30 with class splits, but not separate classes. So we are expanding ranch this year, so it isn't going to be 6th through 8th and 9th and up, or whatever it was last year, that we're going to be running 6th and 7th together, 8th and 9th together, 10th and 11th together, 12th and 13th together. So we have expanded that out a little bit, so it'll take a little bit more time, but not like an exorbitant amount of time. So by the end of Sunday, we'll have those classes hopefully completed on a good weather. And you'll note that the up trail is going to last into the evening, but a lot of our days are done earlier in the good weather schedule. So we will have extra time at the end, which we'll talk a little bit about how we will fill those too. So Monday, moving into more of our Western and or English, or Western, I'm sorry. The indoor arena will have showmanship with a split arena starting at 7 a.m., followed by Western horsemanship. And you'll note the grades are going to be different because you'll note on the Monday in the outdoor arena for Western pleasure, we're going to be starting horsemanship with even grades, and we're going to be starting Western pleasure with odd grades. So again, we don't have that overlap of kids needing to be at different places at the same time. So you'll have to really strongly pay attention to what grades are where and what times if you're going to be showing at the State Horse Show this next year. And then we are still working on trying to have a mixer at the end of that night, potentially 2 mixers, but we don't have all that figured out. And grand entry, we're still working out to be determined as well. And then Tuesday, you'll see it's all of our English classes. So Tuesday in the indoor saddle seat will start at 7 a.m., followed by English pleasure. Again, note the grades for between English pleasure and English equitation. Hunt seat will be starting in the outdoor at 7 a.m., followed by English equitation. So on a good weather schedule, we're going to be done at relatively early time on Tuesday, as most of the days are going to be done except for trail earlier, because we have to kind of work in that extra time in case of a bad weather shift. So now bad weather schedule. Bad weather schedule means we're moving and running everything indoor. So on a bad weather schedule on Friday, you'll see jumping figure 8 would start at 7 a.m., followed by poles, and we're going to run till we're done. So it looks like approximately 9:45 if all goes well, all smooth. So a longer day, but all done in the indoor, if it's a bad weather schedule. Saturday, same thing. We're going to start with barrels at 7 a.m., followed by key race, and we're going to run until we're done. That one's going to be a little bit longer day because barrels generally is our largest classes with participants. Now, if things should shift and in the middle of the day, we have a good weather day and we're running, and then we have to shift to a bad weather day, it will shift to after the indoor stuff. So those outdoor classes that couldn't be held will move to after the indoor classes on the good weather schedule. We are still working about what is the determination and how do we figure out what connotates a bad weather day and when will we call those. We're still working on what that protocol is going to look like, but please know if you're scheduled to ride in the outdoor arena, you may be riding in some, it might be light rain, it might be mist, it's not going to be perfect. We will be utilizing the outdoor unless there is unsafe conditions or bad footing. We will be utilizing the outdoor, or it's just a total downpour. We are still going to be utilizing the outdoor, but we are going to put together a protocol of when do we call that, who makes that determination, and finally, how do we notify you if that change is going to be made during the show. Sunday on the bad weather schedule, you'll see we have ranch, followed by equestrians with disability, followed by training, horseless horse skills, and followed by trail. So on that, it's going to be a constant go, go, go in the indoor arena for that day on Sunday. Monday, same thing. We're going to start with showmanship in split arena, followed by Western horsemanship, Western pleasure, and just continue moving on through all of our Monday schedule in the indoor arena. Tuesday is again stays with all English, starting with English equitation, followed by saddle seat, followed by hunt seat, pony and pleasure type, followed by hunt seat. So again, we're going to continue on. We still don't think it's going to be a super long day on Tuesday, even if we have the bad weather schedule. So what we know, tentatively, the horse-related projects are going to be judged at Simon's Arena during that event, and the horseless horse projects are going to be judged on the second weekend of that second horse show weekend, which would be September 13th and 14th. So differently than before, those will be judged at separate times because they have separate awards, and we don't think it will affect those type of things, but that's the best way we can do to schedule in, have the location to be able to do it, and the time frame to be able to do those. Now, note, those are still tentative, but that's what it's looking like is going to be happening. Simon's Arena, we are currently now looking at stalling options. If you know or don't know, Simon's Arena has about 350 indoor stalls, but they're 8x8, so they're a little bit smaller than what we're used to, but they will work. And WSCA will be putting up their stalls, which are the same ones we normally have in the cattle barn, those portable stalls, at Simon's Arena, but in locations that are going to be outside of the barn. They'll be covered, but they still will be outside type things. We know we're not going to be cutting quotas or reducing numbers that counties to be able to qualify. So we're still going to have that large number of people. And we might end up drawing for stall locations by county. So it'll be luck of the draw. So it might not be by choice, but by doing that, we do know that decorations will be limited this year. And we'll let you know what that looks like, but don't plan on bringing big elaborate outside things because the walkways might be different size. The stalls are going to be different. They're going to be metal, and that kind of thing. Shavings will be provided at Simon's Arena, but it's going to be done differently than it has been in the past. In fact, it's likely probably that you'll order by county what shavings you want, and those will be delivered to your stalls before you arrive, so that those will be all ready there, that you don't have to come up to the horse barn office and purchase those at least first off, unless you need additional bales later on. But those are still going to be available. It'll just be done a little bit differently. You might have to pre-order what you want to start with. The second horse show on that second weekend, the miniature horse, again, just a reminder that it's hippology, horse judging, speech, and demo. Sunday will be state drill competition, with Saturday being the miniature horse state competition. Questions? Amy, if you can help monitor the chat, that would be great.
I currently see no questions. Oh, one just came in. The split of horses means those members would have to travel 2 weekends. Would it be possible to put skills on the second week?
The skills on the second week is a little bit tougher. The only thing we struggle with that being, is because they utilize horses that are already at that event, and we have those horses there at that first event. But I take notes of all of the questions or concerns that people have, so that we can talk about those and make sure it is still our best option. So I will make note of that. But that's a good question.
Will we be able to arrive this Thursday evening still?
Yes, yep, that'll all still be the same. The next on our schedule after we figure out stalling, we'll be figuring out camping. There will be camping available, but right now I can't even tell you what's that gonna look like. But that part will remain the same. That Thursday will still be check-in and coming in and getting all the stuff settled and campers coming in and all of those kind of things. Any other questions?
Somebody asked about where they can find these recordings. I'll share the link. They're on the State Horse Show website.
Okay, so if you go into the main 4-H, Minnesota 4-H horse website and you click on State Show, they're located there. So you'll be able to, if you miss one or you want to go back and look at it or see it, you'll be able to see it there.
Will there be more open arena time and open arena time for outside and inside?
I doubt there will be much for indoor or outdoor, but we are looking at the option of putting in a second outdoor arena at Simons so that we will have a location to be able to utilize for at least warm up on horses. With the schedule and the timing, if it's a good weather day, potentially there'll be open arena time in the evenings, but on a bad weather day, I'm not exactly positive what I can tell you yet on that. But I will write that down for us to discuss open arena time. But I know Simons is looking at putting in a second outdoor arena, so at least we could get some warm-up time in for the horses. And there are some other options that we're working on with Simons right now for outdoor and warm-up time.
Somebody asked, I don't know what this question means, but maybe they can chat. What about the horses for the judging competitions?
For the horse judging contest on that second weekend, they'll be being brought in. So we'll be securing the horses for the judging contest for that second weekend. I just don't know exactly what that's going to look like yet. So right now I think you're asking about horses. Right now you volunteer your horse to be in the judging competition, and sometimes they get selected, right, to make those classes. And with the move to the second weekend, we're looking at bringing horses in.
Will we be docked for not having decorations, and how will herdsmanship work if some people leave or come and go?
Right, so we haven't talked about herdsmanship, and no, you will never be docked for that, especially when we're putting the limitations on. And the same will be whatever we decide. We haven't talked about it yet, but whatever we decide herdsmanship is going to look like this year, that's the standard that we'll hold you to. And it might look differently because of our different situation and potentially having some outdoor stalls. We may lax some of that or make that a little bit easier on you. But I don't know that for sure. We haven't talked about that yet.
Do you have to pay for the shavings or are they free?
Nope, you'll have to pay for those same as you do now. I don't have the price yet. We're still, we haven't talked and negotiated that price yet. But right now, currently, you still buy your shavings. It'll be the same type of scenario. But you would just order them. If you order them ahead, your county potentially would pay for them, and your county would figure out whether you reimburse them or the county pays for them.
Balance.vanillagift.com for convenient self-service options like checking your balance, reviewing transactions, reporting issues.
Somebody's asking, will there be a schedule or website that we can have for this? I did share the schedules in the chat. The bad weather and the good weather. I shared it in the chat. Plus those schedules will get posted on the State Horse Show website, and I also posted the link on the website.
Followed by
Any other questions?
Will Dan Patch kids be stalling with their counties this year? Will they be required to stay the whole time?
located on the back of your car,
We're still figuring that out. I can't answer the Dan Patch stuff yet.
followed by count.
I'm sorry, I don't have all the answers. It's just there's a lot of moving pieces with the shift, so we're doing the best we can. And we kind of have an order, like the first was trying to figure out the schedule, if we can make this work or what we need to do. Next is stalling, and then we'll be working on the pieces that fall in between there. But I am writing down, so when you tell me Dan Patch, I'm keeping a list of things.
That's
Any
all
other questions?
that's all I see for now.
All right, and just a reminder, the changes to the qualifiers, miniature horse won't have regional qualifiers. All youth can sign up to attend the state miniature horse competition, but again, you can only show one horse per class, same as our rules state. Drill team also no regional qualifiers, so all teams who choose to can sign up and come to the state competition and compete. The regular show quotas for the regular horse will not change. We're not reducing them because of the change in facilities. There'll be no change to the show quotas and those type of things for the regular show. So I just wanted to remind people of that.
Convenient self-service option, like checking.
And then just a last reminder, we are still looking for a state 4-H drill team chairperson. We have a role description. It went out before, but if you would like another copy, I can certainly send it, or if you want to talk to me a little more about what that entails. We are still looking for a motivated person to fill that important role, and to help that, and pieces of that is negotiable, but we would love to have someone step up and help us to lead the state drill team. So if you have any interest or want to talk more about it, feel free to give me a call, or send me an email and we can chat about it.
The balance of $3.
So, anything else on state horse show before we move into the county horse points and trip distribution?
Somebody's got a mic open. It's got a bank talking in the background. I don't know who that would be because, I don't think any participant can be on. So if somebody does have their mic open or their phone on or something like that, if you could please turn it off. People are saying it's distracting. Thank you.
Perfect. All right, I'm gonna quit sharing quick and pull up the next. One
Yeah, a
quick.
couple questions just popped in. Do you
Okay.
still have to be in grade 6+ for the mini show?
Yes, it will be the same as the follow-up from last year. So if it's a state competition, it's still the 6th grade and up.
Mini horse is 1 horse per class, so youth can bring 6 horses, 1 for each class.
Potentially, yes, but they could only show in one, so they wouldn't probably be eligible for High Point or any of those awards because you'd be splitting your points up across, all of those different areas. But yes, technically, yes. But you do pay a registration and an entry fee, so you would pay that program fee for each horse that you bring. So it's not one per kid, it's a program fee for each horse, just like we do at state. Any other questions? All right, I'm gonna pull up the points. Being slow. Right. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about horse points and trip distribution training. So just a reminder, as we work in our regional teams, you'll note that there is a regional animal science educator that's responsible for each of the 5 regions of our state. And they're your first point of contact when it comes to anything beyond your local level. Your local educator is your first point. But if you need to reach out beyond that person to ask those questions, these are your regional representatives. And your local person most likely can answer your question, but if they can't, they'll bring in that regional person. But I just wanted you to know that there's a support system across the state for animal science, including horse. My role, Renee Kostick, is to support statewide horse. So I kind of help support and direct that statewide horse program as it goes through all of those educators. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about what the points process and the expectations of that is, what the horse points and trip distribution form is and how to work through that, what the application of horse points at your shows is, and then the application of trips and expectations at your shows, and what are horse quotas and how do you read those? What does that look like? And then what does your state horse lineup look like? And then how do you make that county decision? So currently, your PDC or your county process has a process of how your points are distributed in your classes, as well as then how your trips are distributed. And in 2015 and 16, each county was asked to complete a guideline form so that we are trying to standardize and make state trips and how points are awarded and how trips were distributed a little more equitable and a little more even and fair across the board statewide, because we're one 4-H program. Although we recognize that counties are different, you have some small counties and large counties, and they're all a little bit different. So there were some options to choose from as you went through that process in 15 and 16. So we know that that has been 10 years. So we're asking every county to relook at it and resubmit a form. Now it might change, it might not change from what you originally submitted. But we're going to talk through what that form is, what those decision pieces are, and things to think about as you make those. We'd like each of those counties to complete a horse points form by March 31st. So your PDCs can look at those, take a look at those and make those decisions, and then publishing what that looks like and or communicating that out to families so that all the kids and all the families in your horse program in your county are clear about how they're earning those points and how those trips are distributed, so that everyone is upfront, that it's transparent, that everyone feels like they understand it and the kids know what they're working towards. And the goal of this is to make it sustainable. So as you think through all the options you make, think about them in a way that this needs to be sustainable, because we don't want counties to be changing them every year for a lot of different reasons. For one, it's hard to keep track of then what you're doing. It's hard to move that on and pass those roles on to volunteers to help do points. It's also sometimes can be manipulated by people of saying, this is the way we want it this year, and the next year we want to change it. And then we find out that sometimes those changes are made just to benefit certain people or families and those kind of things. So we really want counties to think through what is best for their county, what they want for their county, what their goals are in the horse program as far as sending kids to state, and think about how do you make that sustainable through this process. So each of the steps of the form that we go through, we're going to talk through. So the first decision that counties need to make is whether they'll be using a 6-point system or a 10-point system. So what that means is all of the kids in our system, it's a Danish system we use in 4-H. So every child gets a blue, red, or a white ribbon unless for some reason they're disqualified from a class. So you have your blue group. So a judge might award 6 blues in your barrels class to the top 6 highest barrel runs. So your first blue would earn 6 points in a 6-point system. Your second blue ribbon would earn 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. In a 10-point system, same thing. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Some things to think about when you're thinking through your county is, are your classes big enough to sustain the point system? So if you have smaller size classes and you say you want a 10-point system, you're going to leave a lot of points on the table unused. Some of those lower level points are going to be unused, or potentially a lot of your points are, because if there's 4 kids in a class, doesn't mean that everyone gets a blue, right? So if you have 4 kids and 2 get a blue, you've only used 10 and 9. What that's going to end up doing is, if you don't utilize that full set of points at the end of it, when you have smaller classes and more points on the table, you're going to end up with a lot more ties. And ties are never fun for kids. They're harder to accept, they're harder to understand, and tiebreakers. Also thinking about your points and the size of your classes and your size of your county program that you have. generally kind of a rule of thumb is a 6-point system is good if you've got like 30 to 40 kids in your program, or smaller or larger, you could look at the 10-point system. But you really want those points also to have some value, meaning that if every kid is getting a first blue, a first blue, a first blue, because you have 4 kids in your program or you have 10 kids in your program and you've got a 10-point system, it takes away the value of earning that first place blue ribbon. So those are things to think about on your county level. Notes that no red ribbons are eligible to earn points, so it only goes to your blue ribbons. So it depends on the number of blue ribbons a judge gives in that class, a first, second, third, fourth, fifth, or whatever those are, but no red ribbons are eligible for points. Points earned are for a horse and rider combinations. So if your county allows kids to bring 2 horses, so for example, they might bring a game horse and a different performance horse. Those points are not by rider, so they're not gaining points in both. If the 4-H'er is riding Lightning for games, then they are earning points on Lightning only towards the games classes. Then if they're riding Thunder for performance, they're earning points on that horse and rider combination. They are not added together for the rider. It's horse and rider combination that earns the points. If there is an ineligible rider who places, that rider's points would go unused. So for example, if you have a 4-H'er who didn't get a horse ID'd by May 15th and didn't have an opportunity to use the exemption in that time frame. So, or let's say it happens a lot, right? A horse passes away closer to your county fair and you have a backup horse, but it wasn't maybe it was ID'd by then you can substitute. But if it wasn't ID'd and you just pick up another horse, you can ID it late, but then that makes it ineligible for points and state trips. So for those ineligible riders, let's say an ineligible rider who maybe purchased a horse on June 20th, they can still show at your county fair and they can still ride in all your classes. And let's say that 4-H'er then places first in barrels, for example. So they would get, if it was a 6-point system, 6 points. But those 6 points, because that rider's ineligible, the child still gets the 6 points, but they don't go towards anything because that rider's ineligible. And I'll show you what that looks like later. So what I'm saying is they don't bump down to the next rider. So if you have an ineligible rider, whatever points that or place that person has, if they took second, those points for that second place don't move down to the 3rd place rider. They basically go unused with that ineligible rider. The second determination that counties will have to make is determining which classes will count or which ones will earn points. So for example, in games, barrels, pole weaving, jumping figure 8, and keyhole, most of the time counties, of course, are going to pick all 4 of those because they can ride in all of those at state. The differences generally happens in performance. There are some counties who choose not to have trail as a point earning class. And that's not highly likely, but it does happen once in a while because trail is a separate quota, and we'll talk about that a little bit later too, that they just count the main classes as the ones that earn points. But it is the county's preference of what they want to count towards points for those classes. And you'll note then there that Western Pleasure and Ranch Pleasure is in there. A 4-H'er cannot ride both Ranch Pleasure and Western Pleasure, even if they have 2 horses. The rider has to choose between Western Pleasure and Ranch Pleasure because they are both a pleasure class and they can't ride in 2 pleasure classes. A 4-H'er cannot ride in 2 pleasure classes. So then they can only earn points in either Western or Ranch Pleasure. The third one is points allocations for games, for example. So in games, you can either have your point allocation all together or by straight times, which means all participants in the discipline, like in barrels, compete together and the fastest time in each discipline earns the points. So what that means is, for example, it'd be 6th grade and up, all run together in a barrel class, and the fastest barrel time earns your 6 points, your next fastest 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, straight times, because all the kids who are state eligible 6th grade and up all run together in one class. If your county chooses to do grade divisions, your participants would earn points based on the fastest time in each of those grade divisions. So for example, if your county ran 6th through 9th grade together and then 10th through 13th together, your 6th through 9th graders would run their barrel barrel pattern, and the fastest time in that grade division would earn the 6.5432. Then in your 10th grade and up, the fastest time would earn 6.54321. So you would have two basically sets of points based on each age division, grade division. So some things to think about in a county is what your county, I guess what your philosophy is kind of, what do you want to send to state? What are you looking to send? So if you're doing all together, you're going to send your fastest riders to state. In a combination of points, correct? Because it's everybody riding together. Now, in grade divisions, there are a couple philosophies that people think about is sometimes they feel that the younger kids can't compete as well as the older kids, so they want to give them an even chance to earn those points. But I can tell you some of those younger kids are just as fast as older kids, if not faster, in sometimes. But if your county does other awards type things in grade divisions or gives out grands and reserves to the older group and to the younger group, then it makes sense that you might want to do it by age division. But know that if you do by age division, you also have the higher chance of ties when it comes down to your state trips, because those state trips are all together. Meaning if you have 4 performance trips to give out, it's both of those age divisions. You look at the top point getters down to the lowest point getters. It's not 2 from the upper and 2 from the lower. It's overall. So potentially if you do it by age division, you can have more ties, depending on what that looks like. But it's things to think about, kind of your philosophy, what your county goals are, what they feel strongly about, how they award kids and what they send to state. So it's kind of, I guess, an ethical and moral philosophical discussion that your county needs to have about what they choose to do and how you earn those points for classes. Same thing in performance. So you can run performance all together. If you've got smaller classes, you can run every kid who's 6th grade and up in a Western Pleasure class and may the best person earn those points, right? 6.54321. If you do it by grade division, same thing. You divide it whatever those grade divisions would look like. If you have a really small county, grade divisions, you are not going to have a lot of value. If you've got 4 kids in your program, which there are counties out there that do that, and you divide it by age division and you have 2 kids riding and 2 kids riding, yep, it might be super fun that kids can earn all those points, but what's going to happen is the value of earning those is going to be less because it's easier to earn them. But secondly, you're going to end up with a lot of ties as well in there. And like I said before, ties are tough. And what would happen in age divisions and performance then is if you have grade divisions, you would basically call back your top few. If you wanted to do an overall grand champion, you would bring in your top few from each grade division to run them again. But otherwise, it's based on points. So it's your top age division winners get the points, and then your next age division winners get your points. Horse show trips allocated by quota. So in your counties, each county is awarded a quota of trips or number of trips they can send kids to state horse show, which is your quota. And those are calculated by a formula. So those are sent out or determined in May. They're sent out or made available usually in middle May. So counties know then what their quota looks like or how many kids they're able to send to state. The quotas are calculated through a formula based on last year's county show participation. And we pull those numbers off of our computer form of it's based on what kids have earned ribbons at your county show, because those are entered through fair entry. That's how you get awarded your premiums and your money. So those records are pulled from there. So if your kid earned a ribbon, they're counted in that. If they're grade 3 and higher in that number. So the 3 options you have, one is to divide those trips evenly between games and pleasure. So for example, if your county has a quota of 6, if you say you're splitting evenly between games and pleasure, then automatically 3 would go to games and 3 would go to performance classes. So then you would have 3 games trips and 3 performance trips. Now, if you have an odd number of trips that year, so maybe you have 5, then you split them evenly, so it'd be 2 and 2 to make 4, and the odd trip goes to the discipline that has the most participation. So you would put and that would be based on your registration at the current year's show. So you would look, and if you have more kids participating in games classes than you do performance, then that extra trip would go towards games that year, but it would fluctuate. The second option is by percentage of horses in each discipline. And if you do that, then it would fluctuate every year based on how many kids register for classes. So what you would do is take your total number of kids divided by the total number of kids who are in games. And that gives you your percentage of games. And then you do the same thing with performance. So it's not each class they sign up for, but if Sally's riding in a games class, then there's a tally for games. If Joe is riding in performance, there's a tally mark under performance. If Jim is riding in games and performance, there's a tally under both, because he could potentially earn 2 trips. He could earn a performance and a games. Now he wouldn't be able to take those, but he could earn them both. So the positive thing about the percentage versus evenly, if your demographics in your county shift a lot and your county said, I want them evenly, and all of a sudden, like over the course of a couple years, you have a huge influx, like you have a really strong performance kids, a lot of kids in performance, and you have very few in games for a few years because of just a shift in number of kids and what they're performing in, and you have it evenly, you're stuck with an even distribution, even though you may have 20 kids in performance and 5 kids in games. So you're stuck with an even one. So it's not going to feel like it's fair. But if you consistently have had pretty even demographics across the board, evenly might be the easiest way for your county just to say it's split evenly. The positive thing about if you have it by percentage of horses in each discipline, that ebbs and flows with the changes in your program. So if it fluctuates and all of a sudden you've got a lot of gamers, then your percentage of quota trips towards whatever discipline moves up higher, shifts with the kids that are in your program. And if it's even, your percentage is still going to have it evenly distributed, because if you have an even number of kids, the percentage of horses in discipline is going to automatically then be even as well. The last option, which most counties don't use it, don't need it, is with a designated English trip. And generally, I would even say that this would be considered as if you have a really, really strong English program in your county with lots of kids in English of your performance trips. So you would either have the even distribution between games or by percentage, whatever your performance number ends up being, whether it's 3 or 4 or 2, then this would say that you would automatically have one of those designated to the kid with the highest number of English points. So most cases that's not needed. I think we have maybe one county that does that, who has a really high percentage and really strong English program in their county, who designates a trip automatically for English. But most of the time, your number of English classes are equal to your number of Western classes. So most counties don't need that English breakout. So now just talking about points. When you think about and you look along this example of what this is look like, one thing is your judge does not pick your state trip winners or who gets those trips. They don't know anything about quotas. They don't know anything about how we pick those kids who go to state. They are only there to give out blue, reds, and whites. They don't even know what our point system is. They're not trained on it. They're not aware of it. They don't know it. So do not expect your judge to be picking your state lineups, which is different than all the other livestock species. Because in livestock, yep, they pick your state lineup for the swine project, right? In horse, we don't do that because of the number of different classes that you can participate in, versus in swine, you're in one swine class, so they can pick that lineup. So if you look across here, and you'll note one thing I will point out, if you look down, just so I can qualify this, because that'll be a question that comes up, underneath Western Pleasure, you'll see that there are six point winners, meaning there are there are 3 6-point winners, meaning that there were 3 first places in that class. That could be 3 different age divisions. And I will give you one piece of advice. If you set up your points like this one is, it's really confusing if you do give out awards by age division, by mixing them all together. So I would advise you to put your 3rd through 5th together. Actually, they don't even need points unless you're doing county awards, but then your 6th through 9th together and your 10th and up, instead of running them together like this, because it's going to be harder for you to pick out your grade winners if you need to. But in the case where everyone's riding together, it doesn't necessarily matter. So if you look on the top yellow, it says performance is highlighted in yellow. You'll look at the classes and all of the points that Sally got. So she got 6 in Western, 2 in horsemanship, 4 in trail, 6 in showmanship, and 4 in English equitation, for a total in performance of 22. And then you'll note Jill has the red highlight across there. So Jill, for example, this is where I say Jill is highlighted because Jill was an ineligible rider. So she earned those points, and you'll see she had a total of 13. So potentially she would have been in the lineup, but because she's an ineligible rider, she still earned those points, but she doesn't get put in the lineup. So if we look at our total and performance down that yellow column, you'll see that Sally has 22 points, so she would be first in your performance lineup, followed by Billy, followed by Sam, and then Jill would be ineligible, so she wouldn't appear on there, followed by Joe. Same thing would happen across the board in your games classes. You would have your games that you see in green, and then your total down the left of those total points in games. So if you were doing an all-together straight across the board, your lineups are pretty simple. For each one, it's just top points getter down to least amount of points getter. And if you have 3 trips, those 3 are eligible for the trips, and then you list your alternates after that in order. Tiebreakers are set. They're non-negotiable. So the first tiebreaker goes to the youth with the most first place blues. Second tiebreaker is to the youth with the most second place blues, then third place, fourth place, and last is a flip of a coin if it's still tied. So you may have a kid who's tied at 14 points each, but maybe one of them did like consistently got third place, third place, third place, third place, but one of them got first in 2 classes, but their points overall were tied. It'd be the one that had the most first places. That's the tiebreaker. So that's how those tiebreakers happen. And those should be consistent across every county. So in general, horses, like I said, use the point system. This is not done by the judge because the judges are not trained. They don't know the point system. They don't know anything about that. They are trained to judge the class and award blue, red, and white ribbons. That is it. Lineups are based on performance trips and games trips. Extra trips. So if you were to earn an extra trip for herdsmanship, or you had an extra bonus trip, those are added to your quota trips, just like regular trips. So they're not like, oh, what are we going to do with this free trip? And do whatever we want with it. They are added in. So if if your county had a quota of 6 and it earned a bonus trip, now it has 7, and they're distributed as your sheet says, based on whatever your county has decided. Kids should be able to make the decision on which trip to take. So if they are eligible or have earned, if they have one horse and they ride well in every class and they show up in one of the top, whatever it is in your games and the top in your performance, they shouldn't have to designate ahead of time what trip they want, because what if they just fall flat that day and whatever they said, oh, I really want to try for this, but they did really well in the other one. We shouldn't penalize them or have to force them to make a decision ahead of time. It should be based on what they do that day, and they can make that decision at that time. So they should not be required to decide what trip they're going for before the show. Points and trips are based on horse and rider combination, as we stated before. So we're going to talk quickly about those trips. So regular quota trips are based on last year's county fair participation. Trail is not a separate trip. So your county is given a trail quota, but that comes out of your regular quota trips or your performance trips, because it is a performance class. So it's listed. You can only bring or allow so many kids in your class or in your county based on your quota. Only so many of them can sign up for the trail class, but it's not a separate trip, so they don't win that separate trip separate. Training is based off of enrollment for the current year. So you can and must choose between a training trip and a regular trip if you won both. So if, let's say you had a training horse and you earned a trip, and you had a game horse and earned a trip, you have to choose which one of those trips you want to take, unless the training trip would go unused. So if there were 2 of you in the training program and you had both options and you declined your training trip and you went with your games, then the second kid in line declined theirs too for training. So really no one would be able to take it. Then it would come back up to you. then you could choose both trips if you wanted to, but it's only if the training trip would go unused that you can take both a regular trip and a training trip. Horseless horse and horse related exhibits. Horseless horse, it's a quota based on off enrollment, which is almost always 2, and horse related is always 2 for each county. And the new horseless horse skills, which is actually horseless horse kids who are working with horses and learning about them. That was new last year, actually 2 years ago. And that's based off a formula of how many horseless horse skills trip that your county would get if you have participants in that class. And it's kind of modeled after the training program, but it's for horseless horse kids who are working with a mentor horse who can demonstrate the skills they're learning. Similar to a training horse, but they're working with an already trained, gentler horse, but on the skills that they're learning. Some of the unique trips that we offer, Dan Patch and youth leadership trips, those are automatic trips, so it does not affect your quota. So if you have someone in Dan Patch who earns the top 10 and earns that Dan Patch trip, they're in addition to whatever your quota is. So if they earn a barrel trip or a game trip or a performance trip and they're a Dan Patch winner, they should take their Dan Patch because they can take that horse and participate in every class that they got a blue in, and then that frees up your quota trip to another kid in your county. Extra trips awarded such as bonus and herdsmanship just become another one of your quota trips, as we talked about. Saddle seat is a unique trip that a lot of people don't know about, that a rider can accept a saddle seat trip, but they can only show in saddle seat classes, but it does not affect your quota. But that's only if they showed in saddle seat classes at your county and got a blue, that they can automatically take that saddle seat class and trip to state, but only show in the saddle seat classes. But that doesn't, if they choose that option, doesn't affect your quota as well. Achievement level 6 and training level 6 participants are automatic trips that don't affect your quota. Kids don't have to show if they're participating in level 6 at your county fair, they just automatically earn that trip to state to compete. And as I mentioned before, Ranch Pleasure and Western Pleasure are both pleasure classes, so a youth can only participate in either Western Pleasure or Ranch Pleasure, both at your county level, and they can only sign up for that if they earn that a regular quota trip and have gotten a blue in one of those classes. Can they show it that? So how to read a quota sheet. This is what a quota sheet basically looks like. If you go across, we'll use Aiken as an example. In 2023, they had 34 kids participate in their horse show, which by the formula gave them 6 quota trips. So if they were doing equal distribution, it would be 3 and 3. If they were doing by percentage, that we would have to calculate that. So, and then the next column over, you'll see that they had 3 trail trips, which is also based on a formula. So what that means is of those 6 kids who have a regular quota trip, 3 of those kids can sign up to show in trail at state. So it's not a separate trip. It's not an additional trip. It's not an extra quota trip. It just means that 3 of those 6 kids can sign up for the trail class. And counties can determine whether it goes to your top trail points earner at the county or whether it goes to your performance kids in order of who did the best. Signing up for those trail trips, that's kind of a county determination of who gets those trail trips. Training, the enrollment was 5. You'll see then their training quota trip was 1. And if you follow over, their horseless horse enrollment was 3. So that gave them a quota trip of 2. Horseless horse skills quota trip, none are listed in here because it was brand new and we hadn't calculated it yet, but that'll be listed there for those kids who are in the horseless horse skills trip. Their quota will be listed there. Horse related is always 2. Then you'll see if your county earned a bonus trip, that bonus trip will be listed under this. For example, it says 2024. So then if you had an X or a number 1 in there, that would be added to the 6 of your regular trip. If you had earned a herdsmanship, that also would then be added to the 6. It's not already included in that quota. And so on. So you would see how those are. And if you had a Dan Patch winner, they're listed there too. So you know that that Dan Patch winner has an automatic trip. And then on the far right, you'll see how many tax stalls are allowed for your county at state. And that also is by a formula of number of horses participating. So horse show lineups. So this would be an example of a horse show lineup. So if you look, you would have a performance lineup and a games lineup, and you would list the number of trips under each one. So in this case, it's either an even distribution or by percentage that was actually even. So you'll see that Sally, under performance, Sally had earned first and James had earned second, Jill had earned third, and then alternate was Cindy and second alternate was Zoe. And you'll note that Zoe has Doc, and Zoe also appears under games with her horse Rio. So in that case, she potentially could earn both trips if it got to her, but they're two different horses. So on the performance column, you'll see a green X by Sally, which means she accepted the trip. You'll see James in yellow. He has actually earned 2 trips, one in performance and one in games. And you'll see that he has a green X by performance, which means he accepted his performance. Then that means he automatically declined his game trip. So you'll see a red X by that. Jill is listed in the lineup, but she's too young. That's what the blue means. Some counties choose to list even the ones that have earned those trips if they're too young, so they get the recognition. Some counties don't put those up. That's a county decision of whether you list the kids who aren't eligible because they're too young to go. And then you'll see it would have gotten down on the trips if there's 3 on performance, because Sally got one, James got one, Jill's too long, Cindy declined, so it got down to alternate 2 with Zoe and Doc, and she accepted that trip as an example. Same thing follows over on games. You'll see Josie accepted first games trip, then Emma. James had declined it because he took his game trip. Zoe had to decline as first alternate because she accepted her performance alternate trip. So it goes to alternate, second alternate under games as Anna. So you'll see 3 green X's under each column. Those are the kids in order who accepted those as it got to them. So that's what your lineup should look like. The alternates should be listed so the kids can see where they're at and know if it's getting to them or if it gets to them and those kind of things. And then they can make those decisions on what trip they accept and take. So your county will need to be, this training, your county will need to submit a list of those people or team that have been trained in this process. So this is part of that training, or is that training? So your county will probably ask who was a part of this training as they complete those forms to be turned in by March 31st. So that gives you time to be able to think about it, meet as a PDC or as a horse group in your county to determine what your form looks like. And then those are submitted. We keep those in a document on file. So if there are ever problems or trouble in your county or questions or concerns, or a new volunteer comes in and I get those phone calls, or sometimes I get those phone calls at a horse show, I can pull up what your county's to be doing and to be able to help you walk through that as a volunteer who's working with that, or to help a family understand it better, or to potentially kind of just help put out those fires if there are questions or concerns and help explain situations, because I can pull up your thing and know exactly how your county is distributing your trips and points. So questions. I know it was a lot of information. What will be coming out is a form, a blank form with the same list of instructions and the same thing we talked about in this PowerPoint for your county to walk through. So all of this will be documented and sent out to those counties to put some thought in on what you want to do as your county portion.
Lots of questions.
I figured.
Also, I shared the link to the Horse Point instruction spreadsheet in the chat.
Okay.
We're gonna be probably, I don't know if you're gonna wanna go back on some slides, but I'll start from the beginning. Some of these, I think you answered, but I just wanna make sure that you go over it again. First question is, before we standardized several years ago, we did 7 points. So anyone who got a blue got 1 point. Would that be allowed?
Nope, it's 6 or 10. So I know there are some counties who had done that 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. We aren't doing that now. It's in order of 10 through 1 or 6 through 1, and then the points end.
Okay, would it be okay to do all together for state, but sort out county placings for those awards?
Yes. Yes. Counties can do whatever their choice is for their own award program. Because I know a lot of counties give out different awards in different ways, and a lot of them do awards for 3rd through 5th grade where we don't require to keep points for 3rd through 5th grade because they're not eligible for state anyway.
But she's asking, is it okay to do all together for state? I'm
To
confused.
earn those trips?
I'm a little confused on the question, so.
Me
She
too.
said, would it be
Let's,
okay to do all together for state, but sort out county placements for those awards? They can sort out any way they want to sort out, but they can't do all together for state. Cause you gotta have a games or performance split or something, right?
you would still need your, yeah, you would still need your games and pleasure, but you
Right.
can do all together by grade divisions
Okay.
for your points. Yes.
Okay. What do you suggest for counties that run all together and the pleasure classes get very crowded? Would it be better to split the class or split out by age group?
I think that's a county decision. I think that's a county decision. If your classes are really large and your arena's not big enough, you might want to think about breaking them out by age divisions. But you want to think about that ahead of time. So it's either you can do it in your premium book, so you can do it ahead of time versus doing it last minute, by splitting your classes. That's kind of I would work with your local educator on what you feel is the best thing and working with your premium book and your fair book. And I can help with that too if you
Is
want
there,
more discussion.
is there a reason why judges do not follow the same protocol for game times for awarding a blue, red, or white? We have had judges that use tighter time ranges for junior versus senior.
It is a judge's discretion. In what and how they do that. How we train our judges at Judges Certification Seminar is that they are trained on a standard and they have a standard coming in mind. So the standard for your younger kids might be different than the standard for older kids and the expectation coming in. And sometimes your standard, so there's been a lot of discussion on whether we should set, for example, a pole pattern, which is standard no matter what. It's the same distance, right? Whether we should say that if you have to have a 14-second or better to be a blue ribbon. We don't do that because judges are trained to take into consideration weather, footing, all of those things as well. So it is they are trained and they're trained a lot on how to do that, but it is dependent on a standard that they come in with.
Does horse training earn points and part of quota? Does the PDC need to determine how this is done this year as well?
Horse training is generally awarded a first blue, second blue, third blue, so the points would be the same. So you would have a 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So you would have basically a first, second, third, fourth. But your judge can determine, because you have different levels in the training program, so the judge could determine that your level 2 person is higher than your level 1 person. Even though they both got first place blues.
Okay, our county uses 3 age division, 3 to 5, 6 to 8, 9 plus. I noticed that you refer to them as 3 to 5, 6 to 9, and 10 to 13. Are counties required to follow a specific age division?
Nope, that's county determination. I just used that as an example. Counties can set their own age divisions.
I think you kind of answered this, but just to clarify, is the trail quota separate from the quota that we divide between performance and games, or is it a part of the total that is split?
It's a part of the total that's split. So if you have 3 and 3, 3 games and 3 performance, of those kids who already earned those trips, only your trail quota number. So if it's 3, only that number of kids can sign up for the trail class. So it's not a separate trip.
Somebody had another question about that. Let me see if I can find it. Clarify trail once more. Only performance trip winners are allowed to participate in trail at state. A game trip winner could not participate in trail at state if they received a blue at their county show.
They could. It just depends on how your county needs to determine how it offers the trail trip or the trail class trip. So if you have 3 trail trips that you can take, or 3 trail kids can sign up for trips, your county needs to determine how those are awarded or how those are offered to kids. Some counties offer it to each of their performance winners in order. Some of them take the trail scores all together. It doesn't matter if you're a gamer or a performance person. And if you were first, second, and third, you're offered to take the trail classes in that order. So it all depends. Your county makes that determination of in what order those trail trips are offered to kids to sign up for.
Okay, if you're using a percentage split, when is that count used? After IDs are turned in or after the final class registration? If a 4-H
After class registration.
okay, and if a 4-H shows performance in games, then they would be counted once for games and once for performance, right?
Correct.
Here's another one. Just to be clear, if there are 5 trips awarded, 2 will go to games, 2 to performance, and the odd trip goes to whichever discipline has the more riders.
Correct.
Okay. For the point spreadsheet you have created, Jill will not earn points for all classes. Will the spreadsheet calculation work if you have a rider that is not eligible in just one of the pleasure classes?
I'm confused why they wouldn't be eligible in just one class. Generally, if you're not eligible, you're not eligible for any. Because it's for a late ID or a late registration.
Is the points diagram, in the points diagram, don't they have to pick between Western and English? So only Western or English would count towards your total.
They do not have to. That's a county decision. We generally have said it's open for, no, they do not have to. If that's a county decision.
Okay.
But-
For the, go ahead.
No, go ahead. That's fine. Go ahead.
For the tiebreaker, the points are used for rider horse combination. They're overall points on both horses for that exhibitor, correct?
So the tiebreaker is if it's a tiebreaker in a games. So then you would just take the top blue ribbons that they earned in games. So the same way they got the trip is the same thing you would use for the tiebreaker. So not their overall.
Okay. Here's another one about the tiebreaker. For the tiebreaker, does it include placings in both games and performance? If a rider does both, say Billy rides both and has 2 firsts in performance and 1 first in games, but Sally only does performance and has 2 firsts.
Nope. So if they're tied, if the tie is in a games for one of those placings, then you would only use the first place in games.
I
If it's a
think-
tie in performance, then you would use the performance classes as a tiebreaker.
Okay, I think we have quite a few trail questions here, quarter trips, and I think you answered this again, but can trail quarter trips go to timed horses if they place higher than a performance horse in the class? I think they're talking about game horses, because aren't game horses timed?
Yeah, so I mean, if they got a blue in it, potentially your county determines how that trail, how those classes are offered. If your county has 3 kids who can sign up for trail, they have to determine who gets offered that class first. So if it's by the top placing trail person, then the next top placing trail, that's how it's offered to those kids who earned those trips. Or if it's offered to, this is the first kid who earned a performance trip, and if they're eligible, because they got a blue in games, they're eligible to sign up first. Your county makes that determination for trail.
So they should talk to their county to know how they're doing.
Yes. Yep.
Is the training a separate trip or added to the quota of the games and performance? And I think you already talked about that.
Training's a separate quota,
Uh,
separate trip.
Somebody is questioning, there is a herdsmanship trip, so do you wanna just, talk about how they earn a herdsmanship trip?
So herdsmanship, you get points. There's judges that come through your stalls, at the state horse show, and you're judged on certain things by cleanliness, on whether your animal's being taken care of, whether the stalls are kept clean, whether the aisles are kept clean, and you get a score 2 times a day. So those counties who earn the highest scores for that overall throughout the state horse show, 20 of those counties earn herdsmanship trips for the next year's state horse show. So it's from your previous horse show.
And all their names get thrown in a hat, right?
Yep,
I mean, they
those
pull
who earn the top points, yes.
it. Can a member show more than one training horse if shown at different training levels?
They can. Yes.
Somebody's asking, where's the quota spreadsheet posted and when annually?
Okay, so
Yep.
the quotas are not posted publicly. They are available to your local extension agent. They're done approximately middle May to the end of May. they're made available to your county. And the reason that they're made available to the county is then they can give them and do any explanation that has to be made about what those points are. So you can reach out to your county local educator, or your horse PDC can, towards the, I would say towards the end of May to get what your quotas are.
Points adjusted if there are less than 6 kids in a class. So 4 kids in a class, the first place blue would only get 4 points.
Nope, it's 6, no matter what.
Okay. What if the performance trips do not get all accepted and there's an extra performance trip? Can that unclaimed trip be given to a game rider?
Correct. If you exhaust either column, either games or performance, right? If you exhaust that list and there are no more alternates, then that trip moves to the other side.
Okay. If someone takes the achievement level 6 trip and they earn a performance and or games trip, would they accept both the level 6 and performance games trip both, or would they only get to do one? If they can only do the level 6, can they still run games performance classes? They get a blue in.
Level 6, if you're taking that's basically a free trip, I believe you only do level 6. And not all the classes they got blues in.
So they could bring 2 horses then, right?
Yes.
So they could bring their second horse and do the performance and game classes with it.
Yep, if they've earned that trip, yes.
Does that, oh, and then it says here, does that give a preference to younger kids if you're putting all points together specifically for games?
I don't think it gives a preference to either one.
Okay, can you run all age divisions in pleasure and then break up into age divisions for games or vice versa? Or does the vote have to be standard across all disciplines?
Nope, it doesn't have to be standard. You have a choice based on both of those, but just think about the sustainability of it, right? This is long term. It's not for 1 year and you can change it next year. You're locked into these for 3 to 5 years before you can make a change, unless there's something drastic that forces a change to be made. Then you have to reach out and request it.
This question, I don't think they finished it. It says when judges use different standard for age groups.
I think we addressed it a
Yeah.
little bit, that they have a different standard for each of the age groups. It's called ages and stages. Basically, the expectation for a younger rider may not be quite as high as those for an older rider if there's more experience, and vice versa.
Okay, clarification, all ages 6+ pleasure, all ages 6+ games for state. Then do county grand / reserve per age group?
If your county chooses to do that, they could do that. Because we don't designate the awards for counties. Counties can choose how they do their own awards for grands and reserves. That doesn't affect points, because points are based on the top blue, not necessarily the grand champion.
Somebody, I know we had a lot of questions on trail, so I thought it was you need to have a blue in trail to be able to participate in state. Cause I know you're talking about if the kids get first in blue and their, their points, they got a blue, but they actually have to have a blue in trail and participate at the county in trail, correct?
Yes,
So
you have to have a blue to sign up for any class at State Horseshoe. You have to
so
have earned a blue in that class.
you'd have to compete in trail at your county to get a blue.
Correct.
Okay. Level 6 training would have to have earned a trip for game or pleasure to participate. Not, right?
Yes.
They have to earn a trip for game or pleasure to
Well,
participate?
if they're gonna ride in other classes, because level 6 only allows you to ride level 6.
Because here it says level training would have to have a earned trip, have earned a trip for game or pleasure to participate. So they can do level 6 training, but they can't participate in games or pleasure unless they earned that trip.
Correct.
Here it is. Can youth bring 2 pleasure or 2 game horses to county fair and ride them in different disciplines? So one horse would be used for Western and a different one for English.
That's a county decision based on, a lot of it's based on stalling. You can, because our rules only say that you can't ride the same horse in the same discipline. The thing that you're gonna hurt yourself in is the overall and the points for trips. Because English and Western are together.
Okay. Here's on the ineligible rider question earlier, remember when she said they had one ineligible performance rider? She's explaining that Sally sent in IDs for more than one horse performance horse. On check-in day, she decided to ride Rocket in Western Pleasure and changed all her other performance classes to JoJo since she registered her classes with JoJo. She would ride Rocket in Western Pleasure and not be able to earn points in that class.
It would be a late registration if you change after you registered your horses.
So they would not qualify in that class to go to state. as
Correct.
thing. So that's why that one wouldn't qualify in that one performance class, because they used the horse that was late.
Okay, yep.
Another one here. Sorry, I'll ask that question better. Could a judge using a different standard for age groups affect the point spread for younger versus older if you group everyone's points together for state trips?
If they're riding everybody together in one class, the standard's gonna be the same.
Same questions.
Could a judge using a different standard for age group affect the point spread? So if they split the age groups, it would change the point spread?
Not necessarily. That's a tough question. I think I'm just gonna ask that person to reach out to me and we can discuss that a little further.
Sounds good. Looks like I'm to the end of them. So if anybody has any questions, or if I didn't read them right, or you didn't get the answers, just contact Renee.
Yeah, so, and I just want to let everybody know quickly that our next meeting about an update for State Horse Show is March 26th. It's the same Zoom link again. You'll get an email and a Facebook. Watch that for those, and it's 7 to 8 p.m. again. And we'll just keep updating you as we can on things you need to know in regards to State Horse Show. So thanks, everybody. You can reach out to your local educator. They've also been trained in this points thing if you have additional questions. And if they want to bring me into it, that's fine as well. So thanks everybody for participating tonight, and we'll see you next month.
One more question quick. Will you have better camping idea next meeting?
I hope so. That's on the agenda to discuss before March, yes.
And stalling, right?
Yep, stalling and camping are next.
Okay. I assist with non-4-H shows. Do you have any information I could pass on to the Fair Board about the Safe Horse Act?
Not other than I don't think it's going to affect us hardly at all. So at this point, we'll be sending out something like a one-page document of things they need to know. But at this point, we don't see much effect it's going to have on 4-H and fair and county fairs here.
Okay, I think that's it.
All right, thanks everybody.